Hello, Ron. Very good to see you. It's
Always
great
wonderful to
to,
be with you, Alisher.
thank you. It's my very, very great pleasure to see you again on my YouTube channel. We had a very good conversation a few weeks ago. We discussed personal effectiveness, but today I hope we will discuss another very, very important issues. These are resentment and anxiety. But before we go to these issues, I'd like one more time to introduce shortly uh, Ron DeStefano. He is a very, very good friend of mine. Dear my friend, we know each other for 35 years. Ron is quite famous, well-known psychologist and psychotherapist, Dr. Ron DeStefano in Northern California. He is practicing family therapy and he is working with different people for already, I think, 50 years or so. So he has a huge experience. And I'm sure that these two topics, I'm sure perhaps you dealt or you are dealing with these issues maybe every day in your practice, in your psychotherapy. So, and thank you very much for your readiness to share with us your experience, your knowledge. Let's start from resentment. So, I'd like to start with some general approach to resentment. I think mostly people feel this emotion, this condition, when they feel some injustice, unfairness, or some insult, when they feel some powerlessness, maybe some betrayal, or sometimes even lack of appreciation for something they did for somebody, but they didn't get some kinds of appreciation. So there are many, many reasons in social life people may feel resentment. So my point is, I'm thinking maybe a question, maybe just a point of thinking. Is it a kind of natural reaction of people or these kinds of unfair, injustice attitude towards them when they feel such a powerlessness? Or it's not a kind of natural reaction?
Sure. Um, so, Alisher, I think everybody, one time or another, experiences resentment, right?
Hmm.
So, in that sense, you could say it's natural and it's universal, and everybody has to deal with it. The consequences of the resentment is what I think, I, as a psychologist, psychotherapist, with people try to deal with. How can we clean that up? How can we
Right.
get closure on the resentments? And everything that you said is exactly right. I think one of the key things with resentment is a perceived slight or hurt, and the emphasis. Somebody could have actually said something or did something that actually hurt us, betrayed us, put us down, neglected us in some way, or it could be perceived that way. And some people, I think, get stuck more into that sense of injustice, how unfair other people are to me. And even when you think of the word resentment um, in the English language comes in from the French, ressentir, to feel again. So there,
Mm.
and you even think of the word resentment. It's like again, re is again and again. Something is getting sent. So there's like this sensitive trigger that happens around resentment. And since so much of my work over the past 53 years has been with couples, I can really see how that resentment, if it's not dealt with, becomes a wall between people
Mhm.
who love each other but stop expressing it
Mm.
because when you think of it, feelings are designed to be like a river flowing. You have a feeling, it comes up, you experience it, you feel it, and it passes, and then another feeling comes up. That's the natural flow for normal human beings
Right, right.
that go that way. And when you think of it, all of us human beings, when we come into the world, the four major feelings we have is mad, sad, glad, and scared. Right? Mad, sad, glad, and scared.
Not bad.
Those are the primary four feelings we come into the world with. The other feelings that we all have to grapple with at times, things like guilt and shame, embarrassment, those are secondary feelings that come later in life
Mm.
when well-meaning people, well-intentioned clergy, parents, teachers teach us to feel, oh, bad Alisher, bad Ronnie, you shouldn't have done that, and that's when that comes in. So mad, sad, glad, scared. Um, so resentment is on the range of the spectrum of mad, of anger. Um, on one side of anger or mad would be rage, and that's like an explosion. How I think about resentment, it's like simmering. It's like smoldering fire. It's not a big explosion, but it's like there's this ongoing resentment that people feel towards someone or something around an injustice or an expectation that they think is their due that's not happening. Um, and let's see, the the problem is if it becomes resentment now and then, if it comes up and you feel it and you talk about it and people get closure about it and have a chance to say I'm sorry, all those basic things that we learn in kindergarten and first grade, say you're sorry, uh, is really important so that if there's an I'm sorry and an apology, then there could be forgiveness. Okay, let go. Let's learn from this. I'll try not to do this later. And we let go of the resentments. The problem is chronic resentment inside a
Mm.
person and in the relationship. When you think
Mm.
about it, resentment, by definition, like, you've heard me say this before, it may be a kind of a design flaw in us human beings that if there's a problem, our eyes go out, so it must be you. If there's a problem, there must be you. When you were supposed to do something for me, I expected this, and what you said to me or did to me was like hurtful, and you know, now I'm resenting you. The irony is when we hold on to resentment, we withhold the good stuff in a relationship. That's the paradox and the
Mm.
irony.
Mm.
So I am holding on to resentment. So
Mm.
now I'm not going to be kind to you. I'm not going to be grateful to you and appreciate to you because you hurt me and I'm resenting it. So now I withhold. Maybe I avoid you. Maybe we don't hang out together. But the good stuff that people share between each other, the I love yous, the expression of affection, the gratefulness. Oh, I appreciate you so much. And oh, I'm so grateful for you for this. When people are resenting, they withhold that. The other thing with feelings, and especially any kind of anger, whether it's resentment or rage, it seems to be directed at an injustice that you did to me or somebody or something out there. And yet, all the research and all the experience that we as human beings have, that when we are resenting it in resentment and anger of some sort, it really affects our body.
Mm.
It's not healthy for us. It weakens our immune system. It makes us more bitter. It makes us more, we're not happy-go-lucky. We're, I'm angry at you, but I'm the one that's experiencing the anger. And maybe I express the resentment to you or not, but I'm the one that's holding on to it and feeling, and it's getting in the way of not only us having a good relationship and expressing all the good stuff that goes on between people, but it's affecting my body negatively. And everything you said at the beginning, what's the causes of it? The unmet expectations, the perceived unfairness, lack of appreciation, unresolved conflict, betrayal, broken trust, and feeling neglected or undervalued.
Well, Ron, thank you very much. Very interesting. You stressed several times perceived injustice. But in fact, in our life, in our world, there is not just perceived injustice, but there are a lot of inequality, in fact,
Yeah.
kind of also injustice. For
Yeah.
example, one person, he or she could be born in very good family, nice parents, wealthy, everything available. She or he could get a good education, get a good job, live fantastic life. But in other part of the world or just on the other street, there is another one who has no such a family, no, no good parents, not a good material conditions, no good education.
Yeah.
So what about the kind of resentment from this person towards the other one who has everything? Is it also, it's not just perceived, but
No,
it's
absolutely.
objective.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think it absolutely, it's both, that it could be perceived. And if it's perceived, then you got to look at your own perceptive apparatus and why you've been kind of programmed by life and life experience or wherever it comes from to be so sensitive and perceive injustice. But definitely there is real injustice in the world, and we are living in it in a big way that I think collectively we all can see. I think um, one of the things that I noticed that goes along with resentment very often, resentment is outside about a situation, and it could be definitely fair and justified to have that resentment. But once again, what do you do with it?
Right.
Because it does take a toll on ourselves, and it takes a toll on how you're living. So I think one of the problems when you're resenting something that's going outside, very often another word that comes up that I think about is resignation. And again, it's RE, right? So again and again, resignation comes from, in the English language, from Latin, resignare, meaning to give up. So that there's a sense, whether it's in a relationship or a situation or situation you're living, of unfairness and injustice in the world, that there's a sense of not only having resentment to you or the others or the situation, but a giving up and resignation in
Hmm.
ourselves.
Hmm. Yes, that's a very important point.
And along with that, there comes a sense of passivity. There's there's nothing I can do about that.
Right.
And all the beautiful work that the psychiatrist, wonderful man, Martin Seligman, has done on depression. So much research, so much work around the world, so many books. And he defines depression as learned helplessness.
Mm.
So that we learn from life or life situation that we are stuck. And there's nothing we can do about it. There's resignation, depression maybe, and the resentment gets stuck, and you live with that. Even though it's hard, and and the world can be really challenging individually and collectively for all of us, especially these days. The important thing is, what can I do? What can we do? What could that's the where the attention has to go, whether it's with therapy or not, or just within your own self or a relationship, saying, what can we do about this situation? Is there anything that we can do that goes in the right direction of somehow correcting this injustice and making us feel like we are not just being passive victims in this situation, but doing something to
So,
have a voice and to act in some way. That's
so
healing.
before we will go to the issue of what to do, how to deal with this feeling, let me clarify if I understand you correctly. You mentioned that chronic resentment is not a good thing,
Yeah.
but from time to time, just to feel some resentment, it's normal. It's
Normal.
a normal, natural human feeling. But the chronic is a very bad thing. So it is like stress and chronic stress. Is
Yes.
it correct?
Yes, exactly. And when you think about it, we an example would be, I'm driving on the road and someone cuts me off way too close and it's scary and it's dangerous and I want to yell at them and for a moment I got resentment and then so that comes up and then you let it go because all right, it's like no big deal. It happens in life. It's an annoyance. We resent it, but we let go of it. But even in that instance, there's ways to help. And I know you don't want to get there yet, but I'm just thinking it, so I'll just complete the thought here that, oh, instead of getting too resentful or angry, how do you reframe it in your mind? Oh, maybe that person has somebody in the car that's sick and they're rushing to the hospital and they really got to get there, or maybe it's an old person that's really having a hard time. So I can have compassion for them or empathy that I don't know what the reason is, but maybe it's something has nothing to do with me. They didn't personally want to cut me off. They're rushing and they weren't paying enough attention. So I'm not the target there for their aggression and cutting over. So there's different ways like that to play with it. Um,
A person has such a reaction, resentment. What would be your advice? How to deal with this?
yeah,
I understand it could be different approach we may bring, religious, or perhaps different religion tradition would give different advices, philosophical, or even within psychotherapy would be very different approaches. But I know you have your own approach. Now you're writing a book about that. This I, myself, all this your theory. Maybe you will give us a little clue from your own perspective what to do.
sure.
I feel that I have a resentment or
Yeah.
someone close to me has such a feeling. What to do?
Okay. Alisher, I really want to address with you what to do. And I realize there's a couple other things that I want to say quickly about resentment before we get to how to deal with it. Okay.
Right.
That when you like some of the things, behaviors, when people are in resentment in a relationship, how it plays out is that oftentimes there's like passive aggressive behavior or there's decrease emotional intimacy, and there's maybe frequent criticism or sarcasm coming out, that this is the forms that resentment comes out with. There's withdrawal from the relationship, there's harboring grudges, emotional outbursts over small things that people then kind of get overreactive about. And whenever there's an overreaction, emotional overreaction, it's always a cue that what people are getting bothered or annoyed about or resenting is not just about this moment, but here it goes again. Every time I get upset, you're doing it again, you're doing it again. That's that resentment. It comes back again and again and again. And that's how it gets to be a real obstacle in relationships. The other thing I want to say on a personal, on an individual level for anybody, that um, resentment and dealing with resentment is really, really important if there, because it's a vicious circle, that resentment often feeds into trying to get comfort by addictions, and whether it's around alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whether it's food, that people try to comfort themselves when they have resentment. And in 12-step programs that address, you know, getting recovery from any of these addictions, it's a big part of their recovery, and even in the steps that people do to try to do resentment inventories, because resentment is often an excuse. I have worked with so many people, couples over the years, that betray the other one, whether it's sexually or in some other kind of way, or not being, by because using resentment as an excuse for the addictive behavior.
Right.
And then that leads to more lying, deceit, other things that create a lot more resentment in between two people and in people. So it's a really bad cycle. So I just wanted to point that out because it's a really, it plays a big part in addictions. So
Okay. What to do?
what to do? All right. Well, it helps first to see it, to acknowledge I'm resenting you or some situation for something. And then the important thing is to feel it, that it's real important in any kind of healing to get out of our heads. What it goes looping around and around and around in our heads, our thoughts, and our thoughts interfere with the flow of feelings of the river that's supposed to keep flowing, whether it's resentment or later we'll talk about anxiety. Um, both of those things, the thoughts become, instead of the flow, okay, I got resentment, now I'm letting go of it. If we add a lot of repetitive thought again and again to it, as often happens when we're really upset, we can't stop thinking about it. It goes on and on and on. It's like, instead of having the river flow, it's like adding concrete, and then things get more stuck. And then that's when it becomes a condition or an ongoing chronic problem. So one of the things to always realize, because we live healthiest in the moment, is that when we are caught up resentment of what is happening in the past again and again, and now you just did it again now, and I'm caught up in all that, I'm not being truly present and mindful and aware with my senses of this moment and what's the beauty I'm seeing around me and in you and myself. And you know, it, we get all caught up in the thoughts and the feelings. So there's certainly different kinds of therapies around this, but some of the things that I suggest for couples, right, especially, is open, honest communication instead of just acting passive aggressive on it and saying, honey, I'm realizing I'm really holding on to resentment about this, this, and this when you did that. And it's like, I don't want to keep holding on to it. I don't know what to do with. Let's talk about it. Can we fix it up ourselves? Or do we need to go to a third party, a couples therapist, to help us clean it out? But I don't want to keep this between us. I'm going to use resentment in a good way for a moment. Many, many years ago, because I'm a nice guy, people ask me to do things, and I want to say yes. But Alisher, have you ever found yourself saying yes to somebody when you really want to say no?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
That's the part of social life. Sometimes you may say no with saying yes, but your no would be expressed in your tone. So it's interchangeable words, yes and no. Depends on mostly on your tone. In
so
some cultures, at least.
yeah. So you can't do this with everybody. You wouldn't do this with the grocer or just an acquaintance or probably
Yeah.
not a neighbor, but with a friend or family member. Years ago, I hit on this. If somebody asks me to do something for them, a favor, I visualize it and then I check my belly because the heart and the belly is where so many of our feelings are.
Mm.
So I visualize doing that. And does my belly relax or does it get tight? Right? Do I constrict or
Yeah.
is it like, okay? So if it's okay with me, so sure, I'll help you at that, no problem. But if it's like, I don't really want to do that, what I say is this: context is so important. I really value our friendship and our relationship. I'd like to say yes, but I'm afraid if I do, I'm going to resent it. And
Mm.
I try to live my life, and with our relationship, I want to keep resentments either to zero or low amount. I'm afraid if I do that and I don't want to, I'm going to resent it. And I value our relationship and you. And I also don't want to feel the resentment in my body. So sorry, but ask me other time, other favors. But right now, I can't do that. When
Mm.
you're honest with somebody that you're close to, and you could talk like that in that kind of intimate, real way.
Mm.
I've had people thank me for saying no to them.
Very good point. So you may bring your body, sense of your body, feelings, your body feelings to work with your resentment. One of the perhaps ways to approach might be comparison. People, of course, very often compare themselves with others. I don't have a house, he has a house. I don't have a degree, he has a degree. Or my car is bad, his car is good. And kind of resentment might arise from these kinds of comparison. Maybe one of the ways of dealing with that, stop comparing yourself with others. Try just to maximize your own result or scores. Do something what you could do for yourself to have a good life, to achieve what you could achieve, but not to be better than others. So that's always not a good way.
I 100% agree with you. So much so that I find myself telling myself and other people, whether it's my family or friends, certainly people I work with, Comparison is the thief of joy. Notice, whenever you're comparing yourself, you're not happy. You're not feeling joyful at that moment. You're feeling whether it's envy or resentment or unfairness. It's not fair that they have that and I don't.
Right.
So comparison is the thief of joy. And I say to people, if you have to compare, don't compare to others. Compare yourself. Am I
Yeah.
doing better? Am I doing better today than yesterday or in the past?
Yeah. But there is I think there is one more dimension of this resentment. It is collective resentment. Sometimes you are just part of more broader and more powerful collective feeling, like one country towards other country, or one society, or one um, social organization towards another. So what to do with these kinds of more powerful social resentments?
That's a good question. And it's a tough situation. And we're seeing this. There's so many examples that we won't go into, but that everybody, you and I, and all the viewers know, oh my God, this in the world, this is going on, this is going on. And there's so much conflict.
And collective memory here
And
is,
collective memory. And there's the two sides of the coin of the tribe and tribalism. You know, this I mean, it's a sad reality. It's a sad reality, but I I'm privileged. I live in Northern California, you know, and I grew up in the United States and not particularly, you know, we didn't have any money, but I've been able to get educated and get money and do the American success story that is so hard for so many people in America and in the world right now to do. But, back then, I mean, I had scholarships and money that was given to me from organizations and government and whatever, rather than coming out with a degree, a doctorate or an MD or any other kind of degree and having a huge amount of money that I had to borrow that I have to pay back now to the banks or whatever, which is a real educational American dilemma, and has been for a while now. So and just with all the wars and things that are going on with different divisions where people demonize the other and make them less than another human being. So somehow have an empathy and look at the humanness of an other, especially collective in a group. It's hard.
so on collective resentment. So there is a collective memory, which plays a huge role in international some conflicts. For example, two nations could live next to each other, but thousands of years ago, their ancestors had something with each other. They keep this memory, and it affects them, and it raises some collective resentment. It's a very, very difficult as an individual to resist to these kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any advice what to do in these kinds of situation?
I would like the whole world to put our heads and hearts together to address that question, because the problem is it's hard to do it. It's so difficult to do it in a collective way with 8 billion people, with everyone with their own tribe and identity and history and slights and hurts and horrors that what one people did to the other back then, and that collective memory goes on. It's very difficult on a collective level to deal with that. What I find that happens is that there's people, individuals, and maybe small groups of people here and there that come from a place of, wait, we are all human beings. Let's be peaceful and loving and kind to each other. Kindness is so important. Yes, we have our differences. Let's not fight about them anymore. Yes, I've hurt you, you've hurt me. Whether it's between a couple or countries, how does that stop the escalation and the ongoing? You know how much I love to quote Mahatma Gandhi, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and pretty soon the whole world is blind and toothless. You know, I want you to
Mhm.
see, I want myself to see, it's like, how do we stop the collective insanity that keeps going on of not only of conflict and wars, and whether it's conflict between individuals or countries. Um, I I have my own fantasy about that, and if you want, I'll tell you. I mean, I've had it for 50 years, and it's like it's pie in the sky. It's not going to happen. But what I used to dream about as a young family therapist and a therapist that worked with even networks and collections, large collections of people, that just like, oh, well, there was just NATO, there's just like this or that. I would like to bring the leaders of so many countries together, especially that are in conflict with each other in different ways, and to bring their families and their grandchildren and everybody together for like a 5-day retreat. And we don't talk politics, we don't talk other stuff. We play games together, we have fun together, we do non-competitive games. Um, and then if we have competitive games, but with people mixed up from different countries and all, because if just like with you and I, we're such good friends, and you're from Uzbekistan, I'm from here, and once people become friends, then I no longer can see you as in the eyes as a monster or some faceless foe or that has hurt me that I have to hurt back. You know, that if all the world's leaders and their children and grandchildren and their spouses got to be friends with each other, then the leaders they would say, well, oh, okay, well, I really don't want to drop a nuclear weapon on you because I have friends there and my kids have friends there, and also let's not hurt each other because we've become human beings and friends somehow. Pie in the sky.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to bring also some positive element.
Yeah.
Uh, Perhaps sometime when we feel resentment, we could also see this as a challenge, as a opportunity, appreciate it. It's opportunity to be a better, to grow, to get a next level in my personal development. So it is a challenge, but it gives a lot of very good opportunity to be better, to do next step in
Yeah.
my development.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would, and I'll give you a concrete example of how
Yes,
people
please.
could do that and only take 3 or 4 minutes. It doesn't have to take long.
Maybe 1 or 2 minutes.
1 or 2 minutes. We do it in 1 or 2 minutes. So um,
Okay.
you put your right palm on your heart, your left palm on your belly, and you start focusing on what the situation is or upset that is giving you resentment or any other uh, upsetting negative feeling that you're experiencing or whatever problem you have. And you breathe really deep down into your belly 3 or 4 times. And while you're kind of almost like hugging yourself and comforting yourself, you ask yourself, if one of my best friends came to me and they were in this situation and they were feeling this, what would I say to them? How would I comfort them? What suggestions or advice would I give them? And now I get to be my own best friend. And then you listen to yourself and you see what comes up and what images come up. And you be a best friend to yourself the way you would help your own best friend out. Takes a couple minutes.
That's a wonderful. That's a very powerful. That's a different feeling. You feel yourself differently, more protected, more safe.
Hugged. Hugged.
Right. Oh,
Or
thank you very much. Okay, the next topic, if you don't mind, just maybe a few more minutes. It's anxiety.
okay.
Again, we are living in such a very difficult world. Very difficult to predict what will happen tomorrow. Uncertainty. So there are so many conflicts around. Uncertainty at different level, state, international, at society level, individual, family, everywhere. Of course, people lived a very difficult life in the history many times. It's a kind of constant affair, but now everybody feels it's a very worried time. So what to do with this anxiety? So is it a kind of natural thing, so we have to adapt to this feeling, or we could fight, or we could do something?
I look, it is, again, just like resentment, it is a universal experience that we all have sometime or another, some more and worse than others. But let me just ask you this first.
Yes, please.
Doesn't even saying or thinking the word anxiety make you more anxious, Alisher?
uh, no, it helps me to objectify. So I could, when I discuss these kinds of things, it
Yeah.
helped me to see this as a kind of objective reality. I could
Okay.
look at myself from kind of from different from distance, which helps me to regulate this. I understand not everybody maybe have such a feeling. Sometimes
Yeah.
people, when they think about these kinds of things, may become even more worry, anxiety.
So look, the word anxiety comes from the Latin anxietas, which
Mhm.
means which means anguish, anguish um, or solicitude, which is a care or concern for someone. And I know that we talked about this before, but as parents, I mean, if you're a parent where there's love, there's worry, right? We worry about our kids, right?
Right.
So there's something universal about that. But as it, the word anxiety comes from the noun in Latin anxietus, and that noun comes from actually the adjective anxious, which means tight, constricted,
Mhm.
painful. Again, that sense of constriction, shrinking, pit in my stomach.
Defense.
So expansion is what somehow we have to do. Now, I just find, as a therapist who's very influenced by constructivism like you are, um, I don't like using the word anxiety.
Mm.
I prefer to have people, what are you scared about?
Mm.
What are you worried about? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid is going to happen or not? And when you really look at it, you see, that makes it more normal. Everybody gets scared sometime. Everybody gets afraid sometime.
Right.
So it makes it more normal. What I don't like, particularly as a psychotherapist, about the word anxiety is that it becomes then a fixed notion once again. It becomes a thing. It's reified. It becomes instead, once again, just like resentment, fear, fear and scared in different situations. You know, if I see a rattlesnake right in front of me, thank you, I'm afraid. It's a warning, get away. If I'm driving my car and a red light comes on, uh-oh, something's wrong. Better pull over at a gas station. You know, it's the good use of fear, it's a warning sign. Caution, be careful. The bad use of fear is again when it becomes chronic and people are anxious and worrying all the time or a lot more than they want. And it interferes and gets in the way of them being able to enjoy this precious moment. My way of defining fear, worry, or anxiety, it's the gap between the present moment and the future. Whenever we start thinking what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen next year, we don't know. And then we fill it in with, oh, I hope this happens. Oh my God, I'm scared this is going to happen. And we don't know. So we come back to the present moment. That's my bird clock making sounds. So it's like it's the it's a sparrow. It's a sparrow. Okay. So we come back to the present moment. Is there something I can do about that now? What I'm concerned about, is there anything that I can do about it? And I love what the Dalai Lama says. If something happens and you could do something about it, why worry? And
Yeah.
and if something happens and you can't do anything about it, why worry? Now I know that's easier said than done. That's easier
Yeah.
said than done. But I think coming back to the present moment
Right.
is really, really important. And and it's important, I think, we get out of our heads once again and we feel what we're feeling. Let's see, where else did I wanted to go here? So if we feel what we're feeling and are able to express it to others, especially in ourselves, it tends to flow and move. The worst times is when it becomes like caught up with the same redundant thoughts and the feeling, and then it becomes like concrete, and we're carrying around something. We're carrying around something that should be flowing through us. I get scared. All right, I react. I do something about it. I can't do something about it. All right, and then I focus on something else. But there's something about getting the negative loop going with the feelings that I see over and over again that creates chronic conditions that people then have problems with that have to go to mental health people to work with, you know?
Right.
So,
Uh, Ron,
yeah,
I understand. I think the best psychotherapy is wisdom and philosophy. When you have a wisdom, philosophical approach, like you mentioned, Dalai Lama's saying, that helps. But as I understand, anxiety may happen not just because of lack of your philosophical or lack of wisdom, or not just because some psychological reason, but it could be related to your body, to your genomes, genetics, to your construction of your body. Some people naturally more feel this feeling. some people less. So not everything depends on us, I guess.
I
What to do?
no, you know, there definitely is physiological, genetic, and temperament that we
Right.
have that kind of sets the range of what we can experience in life, I think. I
Yes.
definitely think that's true. But you mentioned about the body, and one other thing that I thought is interesting about the word anxiety and the Latin roots that it comes from. It also is the same Latin roots, anxios and anxietas. That's the root in the English language for the word anger, angina, chest pain, angina, and anguish, A-N-G. They all have that in common. So one of the
Interesting.
things that sometimes people come in, I have worked with people that are really scared they're going to have a heart attack. And I don't suggest that people do this lightly, but I talk with people about it and about how they're suffering from the anguish of worrying that they're going to have angina, you know.
Interesting.
But then I would say to them, okay, I want you to kind of put your hand here and feel it. And I said, would you try something? Would you give yourself a heart attack now?
Well,
Thankfully, 100% so far, no one's died at that moment. Sooner or later they die, but not at that moment. So it's a way to get people out of their head and to get more embodied and more present in the moment. In reality, what is real? If there's a rattlesnake and it's real in front of me, okay, move away. But if it's in my head and it's a thought that's making me scared, I need to do something about the thought. I'll give some other examples, but one of the best people on this, there's this book, and you could called Feeling Great. David D. Burns, a psychiatrist, research, done therapy over half a century down at Stanford. Beautiful man. You could go to his website, David D. Burns, Feeling Great. There's lots of free things, there's videos. He's got wonderful ways in the book and on his internet of how to handle anxiety and depression. And he was a student, as I also was influenced by Aaron Beck back in Pennsylvania at University of Pennsylvania, where he went, and Marty Seligman, who was the expert in depression. Both of them were like ace students of Aaron Beck, who created cognitive behavioral therapy, and it was very influential. A lot of evidence, a lot of research, but a lot of good technique. And he's a beautiful man, really full of heart and soul. I highly suggest you can watch videos and free. If any of you out there are dealing with either anxiety or depression, I would definitely highly recommend that.
So, Ron, perhaps there are some very basic things which I guess may help in most cases.
Yeah.
Two, very basic related to our body. Number one, it's relaxation. So when we feel this anxiety, tension, our body is always tense. So first thing, we need to relax. So just muscle relaxation. The second, also very fundamentally important thing, is breathing. Deep, slow, nice breathing, and maybe even perhaps meditating on your breathing. So these two things are very fundamental. Perhaps, I don't know, from your practice, Do they help in most cases or not?
Absolutely, they help. And I use it personally for myself, and I've used it with people I've worked with for like so many years. I want to make another suggestion. There's a free app that you could put on your phone, um, Plum Village. And as you know, I spent a lot of time in training with the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who
Right.
wrote the book, The Miracle of Mindfulness. He
Yeah.
introduced that word in
Wonderful.
the English language.
Uh,
So there's so coming back to the present and your deep breathing, that's the antidote to anxiety. What happens when we're most scared and afraid? When if I'm horrified, terrified, what happens? It's like it's up here. You can't
right.
even breathe. So
Yes.
that's the extreme. So when we're most scared there. So what's the opposite of being scared up here is deep, round breath down into your belly. And the secret to that is breathing through your nose and let your in breath happen, and then let your out breath be even longer
Mm.
so that your next in breath is even more. And it's impossible. It becomes physiological impossible if you're really breathing deep and round to have that anxious feeling in your body be there. It will get lower. And if you put your attention and your mind to that with mantras or gathas, very simple things. Thich Nhat Hanh has a very beautiful one. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. So you're paying attention to what you're actually doing and experiencing.
Yeah.
Breathing in, I know
Right.
I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm breathing out.
Yeah. Meditating on your breathing.
Living in the present moment, I know this too is a wonderful moment full of wonder. I have a shaman friend in Arizona, Ed Aguilar. He does a very beautiful work. His mantra that he tells everybody to do is breathe in love, breathe out peace. Breathe in love, breathe out peace. So simple. And if you do this throughout the day, it will make a difference. Repetition is the mother of learning. Whatever we do, if you have a
Right.
lot of anxious thought, you worry a lot. So what's the counter to that? Breathe in love, breathe out peace. I know I'm breathing in. And it's wonderful. The gathas. So the Plum Village app has wonderful free meditations, all kinds of things like we're talking about. So I highly suggest people do that. The other thing is come to your senses. That instead of being in your head and what you're worried about or whatever, I say, look around. I said this a little earlier, but see what you're seeing, hear what you're hearing in the present moment. Get out of your thoughts and head and pay attention to your senses while you're breathing deeply and look around. And if you have to counter those negative thoughts, you could say, oh, I see that orange that's really beautiful there. Oh, and I'm looking out at that redwood tree out there. Oh, look at that bird that just landed. While you're breathing deeply, so you get present in the moment, sensory. And because if in our senses and feelings, that's where we can start getting the
Mm.
natural flow of our phenomena and our experience. It's supposed to be changing moment to moment. As I like to say, change is inevitable, except from a vending machine.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your knowledge, experience, and wisdom. It's always great to talk to you. And I hope we could continue our conversations, which I believe would be very useful for many people. Thank you very much.
Alisher, I just want to thank you also. I mean, you are such a precious friend of mine. I love your heart, soul, your mind. You're such a thinker, a scholar. You come up with such great questions and you come up with wonderful answers. and you have so much compassion and empathy with who
Thank
you
you.
are. You're a living example of being a great diplomat and former ambassador, as well as psychologist, and just a great human being. And I'm
Thank you so much.
privileged, and I so delight in our friendship. To be
Thank you.
continued, my friend. To
Thank you.
be